Welcome to a very special edition of Access Vegas, where we get notable celebrities such as my good friend Ken McElroy. We also have Mike Sartain, Captain Mike Sartain, and the one, the only Robert Kiyosaki. Rich Dad, Poor Dad flew in to Vegas just so we could do this interview. Robert, how are you doing, man? It's good to see you.
I'm honored to be, guys, and it's a very important show.
Yeah.
I called Rollo up and I said, I got an idea, you know. Rollo dissected men and women, and he packaged it and he put it in easy to digest forms. But as you said, men need to become.
Yes.
Women are. So for Kenny and I, we had to become. You know, we weren't born rock stars. We're not quarterbacks for a pro football team. But we had to become this. This show is for the men especially. How to become the kind of man that a woman wants.
There's no better place to do this than right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I will tell you that right now. Flew in from Scottsdale, Arizona, all the way up so we could do this show today. We have 4 lovely ladies that are waiting here in the wings, but we're starting it here in the plane just because you want to talk about status, you want to talk about success, you want to talk about becoming something. There's the results of your having become something, and you've become something of yourself for a long time now.
Right, well, Kenny and I have been partners for about 25 years, and we push each other along, and we're very happy. We both got Ferraris, you know, went, oh my God, a Ferrari. And then one day I said, I'm going to step it up. We need our own jets. So Kenny has his jet, and I have my jet. So all you men out there, you go from Ferraris to private jets.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video of you saying you got bored with cars. Are you still bored with cars, and now that you've moved on to jets?
No, Kenny, how many cars do we have?
How many cars do you have?
I had 9. I'm down to about 5 right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Ken, tell everybody about yourself a little bit.
Self-made. I met Robert maybe 20 years ago, I think, maybe a little longer. I've been buying real estate since I was in college. Now I bought over $3 billion. We currently own $2 billion right now. I have about 300 employees in Scottsdale, and all we do is commercial. Just apartments, office buildings, self-storage, all over the western U.S. And so I met Robert along the way because what happens is you run out of money quickly, you know, when you use your own. And so you start raising capital. And I met Robert a while back after he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I just invest all over the western U.S.
When I met Kenny, he said he was in real estate. I said, yeah, I've heard that. And back then, everybody was flipping houses. So they buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and they flip it. And so I said, Ken, you're a flipper, aren't you? And he says, no, I don't flip. Now, this is the beauty of Ken. He uses debt to acquire everything, and we pay no taxes legally.
Right.
So we're 100% debt, and we pay no taxes legally. And that's why we can keep going, making more money. But we're not, you know, in Vegas they had flip this house.
Yeah.
We don't flip anything.
We're also going to get into some topics today, especially about like the social environment when it comes to economics today, the family structure today. I think one of the upcoming topics that we're going to see in the coming election cycle right now is really sort of this culture war, this cultural narrative that's coming up very soon. We're going to definitely be getting into some topics about why is it that men don't want to work today. You probably have seen this quite a bit. I think Brett Cooper was just talking about this recently. Matt Walsh and certainly Tommy Lahren. Hi, Tommy. Talking about the NILFs, right? No income, living with family guys who are sort of checking out of the, certainly checking out of life in general. But why is it that we see more enrollment in college with women than we do men? Or why do we see graduation rates with more women than we do with men? Robert, why do you think that you're seeing more and more young men sort of checking out? We were talking about how men must become. Why is it that men feel like it's not worth it anymore? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like there's no incentive for them.
I've been asking myself that because there's lots of jobs, there's lots of work and all this. But what happened to the men? I mean, they all become TikTok dancers today or something. I don't know what the heck they're up to. But what you're hitting up on, women are coming up, men are going down. But what you nailed in your book, women only want to go up. But now women are kind of forced to become down because men aren't stepping up.
Right.
So when I talked to you and Ken, I said, let's do this show to speak primarily to the men. step up the game, become somebody you want to become.
And what is the motivation behind that? Like, why is it? It used to be, prior to the sexual revolution, it used to be that men would have a sense of duty or a sense of accomplishment by becoming something. And now it seems like there's just really no incentive for them to do that. And really, from my perspective anyways, it seems that the more women come up, the more that men kind of taper off and sort of like exit themselves from, well, the sexual marketplace, but also the socioeconomic marketplace as well. And how does that affect our families? How does that affect family growth? How does that affect a country on a whole? So we'll definitely be getting into that on this discussion. Once we're going to be moving over to Sticky Paws Studios here in a little bit. We'll also be talking about sort of social issues today. We'll be talking about some sexual marketplace issues, family creation issues, and so we'll be getting into that here just briefly. But we just want to start things out here on the plane. Want to jump in here and get with these guys as soon as possible. So that's what we're doing today.
I'm here on my plane, and I'm here with what every man wants is beautiful, beautiful women. But this is the point. The reason men have Ferraris and planes is because we want women like you.
So I'm Katrina. I'm a real estate agent in Las Vegas.
My name's Maya. I model. I'm Lisa. I'm an attorney turned entrepreneur.
My name is Kaylin. I'm based here in Las Vegas. I own Legend Entertainment. We do corporate entertainment for conferences.
That's my friend Kenny McElroy. We've been friends for about 25 years now, and Kenny and I started with nothing.
Right.
And exactly as Rollo says, men have to become, women are. And women are beautiful, sexy, and gorgeous and all this. And men become something to attract beautiful women, right?
That's right. So I got a Ferrari, so Robert had to get one. And then I got a jet, so Robert had to get one.
Oh, come on, get my jet first.
So when men come at me with money, cars, and jets, it kind of turns me off a little bit.
Sure.
Even though I like those things, and it makes it very attractive to see a man owning those things, I want to see what the personality is like and what else do you bring to the table. Like, do you have values that potentially are attractive to me? Is there chemistry? Because your jet is not going to, please me in other ways.
Right.
So that's the struggle that I run into.
That's fair.
They're like, here's money, look at my car. But then they don't treat me as well as a guy who may not have those things.
That's a very good point, but a part of this show is a lot of times when men have nice houses, nice cars, and nice jets, they're broke.
Very true.
All it is this act going on.
Yes,
And
that's
so-
not attractive either. So you want something that's in the middle. Like, I always say, I don't want a poor man who's tall and sexy, but I also don't want a fat, ugly one with a Ferrari who doesn't have
You want the whole package, right?
exactly. But I would like to have one that's somewhere in the middle, who maybe is not the richest man in Vegas, but he's going to treat me well.
There's guys with money, but they're not wealthy. So they're rich today. They may have a high-paying job, or they may be a pro football star. But the average pro athlete is bankrupt 5 years afterwards. So they were rich for 5 years, but they're broke because they had money, but they weren't wealthy. And that's what we're going to be talking about this show.
Yeah, and I would just say the rich don't work for money. Money works for rich. It's a big difference.
I guess one more thing is I'm not paying for this jet.
Who is paying for this jet?
My ass, Kenny and I have jets, Ferraris, and all
Things
this.
like this. Books
Yeah.
that sell and
Yeah.
the business itself.
So we buy this jet, and man, I tell you, they're expensive. Holy man. Buying the jet was the cheap part.
Well, you got to sell more books.
Yeah. But the point is, we have assets that pay for our jet.
Right.
So we're not working harder. What Kenny and I do is we go out and find another asset that pays for the jet.
So you guys are both technically unemployed, right?
Yes.
So is your next book going to be Rich Dad Became Hot Dad?
Yeah, look at that.
Robert,
let's
how
say
old are you now? How old are you now?
I'm 76. It's amazing.
Hey, you know what? Al Pacino just had a kid at 82, so you can still go.
True story.
There has to be a God someplace. I want to talk about how you're both entrepreneurs. And I wrote this book just for you. This is my product shot here. It's the cash flow quadrant. There's 4 people: employee, small business, self-employed, big business and investor. The I investor is an inside investor. If you buy a mutual fund, you're an outside investor. So the two of you are entrepreneurs right now, small. The question is, how do you get to the big side and the I side? So Kenny has, how many employees do you have?
300.
Yeah. How do you grow a business? Otherwise, you've hired yourself many times. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
tell us about your business.
I own Legend Entertainment. We do corporate entertainment for conferences, and also Legend Models. We do models for conferences, events, print, runway. It's kind of a little bit of everything. Very competitive market here, though.
Wow.
So.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The question is, how do you grow? How do you expand? How do you make more money?
Exactly. How do I make the money start working for me? You know, it's tough in a services business. So that's where you have to get smart. And I've, been following Robert here for a while and listening to his podcast.
S is
Yeah.
service. And what Kenny and I do is we create assets. And so the difference is Kenny and I can work. We buy this jet, but we don't work for it. Our assets buy the jet. The problem with school is they send you to school to get a job. A job is not an asset. It's like when I invest with Kenny, let's say we buy an apartment house, we put some money into it, Kenny puts debt on it, income comes in, and we pay no taxes. That's an asset. But people with a 401k, I don't consider that an asset. I consider a 401k a liability.
Right. I think when you get a paycheck, you are the asset for the company. I think that's the big difference.
Right.
And so it's just a mindset shift where why not you be the company and hire paychecks? And then you could do things like this, enjoy your money and have financial freedom at will, when you want. And so for me and Robert, we work on the business when we want to work on the business. And I think, Caitlin had a good point. What happens, we all start there, that you actually don't have a business, you have a busyness. It's a big difference.
So exactly the same as Kenny was saying, you're working for a paycheck or for some income, you don't get ahead that way. When you build an asset, we're getting passive income, cash flow coming in, and you can expand. Well, a lot of times if you're an S and you expand, you get busier. That's what Kenny is saying. It's a busyness, but worst of all, guess who pays the highest taxes? S's. Yeah. Small business owners pay the highest taxes in America. Kenny and I pay 0. The general rule, ESBI, generally, this is all across the world, employees pay 40% in taxes. Self-employed or small businesses pay 60%. And B's pay 20% as big business owners. And I's pay 0. So that's the difference from exactly as you asked, Rollo, paycheck versus assets. And Ken and I only work for assets, not paychecks, because our taxes go down. This is all over the world. I is an inside investor. And they always say, insider trading is illegal. That's bull. Outside is when you have a 401k with a stock bond mutual fund. You're buying from Wall Street. What Kenny does is he packages the deal, and I come into Kenny's deal as an inside investor. So as long as I'm part of the deal, I'm an insider, my money, my debt's in there. 0 taxes, pure income. To me, I'd rather have real estate than a 401k. And because I got the tax advantages and I use debt. The more debt I use, the less tax I pay. So Kenny has 3 sets of books. What are the 3 books you have?
Yeah, the ABCs of real estate investing, the advanced guide to real estate investing, and the ABCs of property management. Because you can buy real estate, but if you don't know how to manage it, you're screwed.
So this is my friend here. I know people hate the guy, but he's a good friend of mine, the Donald, and all this. But you remember he was on, he was debating Hillary Clinton, and Hillary goes, "And Donald, you pay no taxes." And the Donald goes, "That means I'm smart." Now,
Right.
Donald got every capitalist on his side, but he pissed off the rest of the world.
But then he went on and said, he goes, the reason you won't change that is because all your donors do the same thing I do, which is the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's why they don't like him, is he says the truth.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
You're-
I'm very independent. I've never been driven to date someone because they're more successful. That usually comes with it when you have a good partnership. And I just kind of worry about myself in that regard. But feel like as society these days, we're taught as women, be independent, don't rely on anybody. And then we wonder why we're not connecting with men the same way, because we're in our masculine energy so much. And so that's something I've struggled with my relationships, is taking the wife hat off, putting the business hat on, and vice versa. And I usually work with my significant other as well. They're usually an entertainer, or because that's how you meet people at your job, so that's been a struggle for me for sure.
For me, I mean, it's kind of the same thing being in Vegas. So when I first moved here, I came from Miami after I finished law school, and I made a conscious decision to not date someone from nightlife, because I met a lot of young men who worked in nightlife, and I just kind of made a conscious decision. I'm not going to date a man who works nightlife. I want to date a professional who has a day job, and just making that small tweak really filters out, I think, quite a bit, at least here in Las Vegas. And it's been 13 years now that I've built the businesses that I have. For me, it's about finding a partner who, one, supports what I'm trying to build. They get it, and I think there's always healthy competition, but you don't want to be with someone who's jealous of what you're building and or wants to keep you down or whatever, tell you, no, you can't do that, or that's impossible. You want to be with someone who's like, you're going to be a billionaire. I know you are. And that's the type of vibe and positive energy that you need to be around, someone who's encouraging and supporting. And sometimes it can be hard to find in Vegas.
And I was going to ask you, so let's say you're seeing someone who's a great partner and they support what you do, but maybe they're not on this train that you're on. They're moving at a slower pace. They're more comfortable with where they're at, and they don't have these grandiose things. They're completely comfortable with and secure in themselves that you do. Do you find that after a while, and in the beginning it's great while they support me and it's working, I'm going to do my own thing. Do you feel like after a while you start to get bored or lose interest when they're not stimulating you the same way? So they're supporting you, but they're not bringing as much to the table that there creates an imbalance.
I think there has to be an equity hustle, right? Where it's maybe side by side you may not be making the same amount at the time, but there has to be a growth trajectory and a path that as individuals you're both focused on. And if you can respect the hustle with each other, there's an opportunity to build there, I think, alongside each other. And that's really kind of where the magic happens. But I think, especially in today's society, and Robert, you've talked about this many times from the stage, we're comfortable in America, right? We have it good. We have it good in America. And so as a result, there's been this culture that's been created around just relax and let's talk about your feelings and let's talk about all
before reels.
Yes, and
less self-accountability. It's society's problem, the government's problem that you're not doing well.
It's someone else's issue, someone else's responsibility to take care of you, and that's not true. It's self-responsibility, self-reliance. And you talk about it all the time.
Right. I can add one more thing, is that Kenny and I started with nothing. And I met my wife, a long time ago. We're married for 35 years. And she knew I had nothing. In fact, I was a skipper of the Titanic, I went down to $2 million. I was flat broke. And yet she stayed with me. And I said, what did I have? And she said, you had ambition.
She knew you would come.
I had ambition. So let me ask this question to you. Can you sense a man's ambition?
Absolutely. And that's what was confusing, is these men were making the same as much money as me, if not more. But there was something missing that I just knew, that after a certain amount of time, I'm going to keep going and they're going to be happy. They've accomplished the American dream. I also, usually date people that are from other countries because that's Vegas. No one's really from here, so that has something to do with it as well.
Where do I have to come from?
You don't come from America. That's all it is.
Any thoughts, any impressions of everybody so far?
I'm moving to Vegas.
You're moving to Vegas? That sounds good. Awesome. 3-1. Yeah, awesome. So with that, we're going to move and transition over to Sticky Paws here in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're going to pick up the rest of this discussion. It's been great thus far, and so we're going to be moving over there. So we'll see you over at Sticky Paws.
See you there.
Welcome, guys, to a special episode of Access Vegas. I'm going to get right into it and introduce our guest. He is a real estate investor, and as one friend told me, he's got $3 billion and a jet. It is Mr. Ken McElroy. Welcome, Ken McElroy. So glad to have him. Sitting next to him, she is a real estate agent and a sex therapist. It is Katrina Rizanova. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. We have the 2014 Miss Nevada. She's an attorney turned entrepreneur. Please welcome Lisa Song Sutton.
Thank you.
She's the owner of Legend Models and Talent and Legend Entertainment. She's also my BFF. This is Kaylin Franca. How you doing, Kaylin?
Very good.
Beautiful.
Thanks for having me.
And she's a Swimsuit USA World finalist. Please welcome Maya Allegra. How you doing, Maya? And this other gentleman in 1972 was a Huey pilot. He's got 2,200 hours over combat hours over Vietnam. He went down 3 times in Vietnam. Please welcome First Lieutenant of the U.S. Marine Corps, Robert Kiyosaki. How you doing? He also wrote a couple books on real estate.
You might know who they
He wrote a couple books on real estate too. Yeah, he did that
That's
also.
right.
And investing. Awesome. Correct. Awesome. Great to have everybody here. Hey, Robert. So last night I went over a ton of stuff that you've done, a ton of compilations. Obviously, I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and there's so much stuff that you've taught. And if you would the idea of the fact that some people, poor people, have this one mindset, rich people have a different mindset. It's so pervasive. And the whole thing where you talk about they don't teach this in schools, they can't teach this in schools. Can you go over that concept and why is it that so many people end up in this place where they're trading time for money and working for a paycheck?
Well, the question I asked, what does school teach you about money? Nothing.
Nothing.
And they tell you, go to school, get a job, save money, invest in a 401k. And that's fine, but you're not going to make it that mindset. You don't have enough skills, you don't have an attitude and all this. So I'm very concerned because the gap between rich and poor in America is now excessive. And we have a cartoon show running the government at this moment. I won't mention his name or her name. And we're in serious financial trouble. They just took the debt limit, the debt ceiling off, and they're now printing money uncontrollably. And it's not going to end well. Every country has ever done it. It's gone down, like Germany did it, Venezuela did it, Chinese did it, Greeks did it. Every time we print money, we crash.
And that, one of the things I thought was interesting is that was April 15th, 1971 when we went off the gold standard.
Yes,
you didn't find out about it for 6 months because you were on an aircraft carrier? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I was in the South China Sea. I flew the Huey gunship and the Huey Cobra on a carrier in Vietnam. And we're getting our asses kicked. I hate to say this, but I almost got court-martialed for this one. I asked my commanding officer in the ready room on the carrier, I said, how come their Vietnamese fight harder than our Vietnamese? They were kicking our asses. And we had the whole might of the U.S. military and Air Force. And these little guys were coming down kicking our butt. And so my attitude kind of went bad at that point. We had to kill a lot of people. For what? And so that's kind of my thing. I went down 3 times, and that's through training. The Marine Corps trained us extremely well. We can fly aircraft with or without an engine, shot up, we just bring them down. And thank God for a crew chief, Staff Sergeant Jackson, he went down 6 times. And so the Marine Corps trains us so well under hostile environments. Yeah. So I do well in the business world.
Yeah, and also the other thing is being a U.S. military officer. It's a lesson in leadership, and you can probably speak to this. I haven't heard you talk about this specifically. The difference between good leadership and bad leadership, especially when it comes to a business.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Kenny and I we've been friends for 25 years. We're entrepreneurs. We don't have jobs. We're basically business leaders. And I was talking to Maya about this. The hardest thing about business is people. And if you cannot lead or talk to people, you stay small. So that's why I went I'm a ring knocker, went to academy and all this stuff. The first word we're taught at the academy is mission. What's your mission? And mission is more important than your life. And the question I was asked, what would you give your life for? And for most people, nothing. They don't live it. They live with passion, they live with purpose. But we were taught to live for mission, and that was the military qualities. I want to be upfront with you guys. I'm actually kind of proud of it now. I got court-martialed twice.
Yeah? I haven't seen this anywhere. Okay, what happened?
Well, because it's a bad officer.
Yeah.
You know, I was a pilot, and Marines love beautiful women. During the Vietnam War, we had no hair. We were shaved heads. And the hippies were walking around, like TikTok dancers or whatever they are.
Hippies were the TikTok dancers of the 1970s. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
And so they were going for the boys with the long hair, the hippies, the Woodstock generation,
Yeah.
all this. So I was stationed in Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station in Hawaii, and I'd go into Waikiki with no hair. I mean, to give me a break, every chick was running because they hated the military. I got spit on, hit with eggs, you baby killer. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I just couldn't believe what we went through fighting for our country. So finally I said, I need an advantage here. So I go up to a beautiful woman like mine. I said, I'll go for a helicopter ride.
That would do it.
That did the trick.
That would do it.
And then they go, and so my co-pilot goes, how are we going to do this, man? We can't figure this one out. We're not worth our salt. So we figured a way to not steal, but to sign out for a Marine helicopter.
Borrow.
For the day. And I fly to this Air Force field, Bellows Air Force Base.
It was Bellows? Okay. Because I know Hickham's there also.
Yeah. And we'd have our little chickadees we picked up in the bar, and they climb on the helicopter with us, and we fly to a deserted island in Hawaii.
I believe the UH-1 can hold 13 people. Is that correct?
We only needed 2 of them.
Yeah, I only needed 2. Okay.
So we're trying to go for the Mile High Club. No, nothing really.
Yes.
We're 25 years old. We're
Yeah.
nuts. We have coolers of beer and drinking and everything you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so we take the women off to this little desert island called Kaho'olawe, most beautiful beaches, Nobody's out there. And one day I got caught.
Oh, jeez.
By who?
I was taxiing in Kaneohe,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden MPs circled my aircraft, and they opened the door as an Air Force captain.
Yeah.
Get the picture. The door opens. I'm solo now because I dropped all the women and guys off.
Oh, that would have been funnier if the girls had gotten off.
Oh, my.
That would have been funnier.
Wait, it gets worse,
Yeah.
I opened the door and beer cans fell out.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no.
And then I fall out because I'm drunk as a swine. And I have no Nomex flight suit is, right?
Yeah.
The green suit. I was in purple swim trunks and slippers.
Wow.
And they opened the back of the aircraft up. There was a dead deer back there, coolers full of beer. It was a great time.
So you shot a deer on that trip.
Oh, we hammered them, man. Wow. Oh, we were crazy. Yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah, the M16 does work for deer.
Oh my gosh.
It's been tested on deer now. We know that.
I would have found that very incredible, like a story, but I do know this: Jamie Villamore has hunted deer in Hawaii before, so it is true.
Yeah. Anyway, the reason I tell the story is we all make mistakes. And I was a criminal. I was breaking. I knew consciously I was breaking every rule in the book. I knew it. And there's a movie by A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Nichols, he was playing Colonel Jessup. He was on the stand. And I was being tracked down by this Captain Abrams, sharp Jewish attorney. And they were, same as in A Few Good Men, they were catching me on fuel records. Because I'd sign up for the bird for 3 hours, and I'd burn 20 minutes of fuel. I said, how can you be flying for 3 hours with 20 minutes of fuel? You know what I mean? And finally, I was lying through my teeth. I was getting fatter and fatter. I was under house arrest in Waikiki, which wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But, I'm getting fatter and fatter. I did a thing called EST, personal development training. And I don't know how I got in there, but I'm sitting there going, what the hell am I doing here? Because we're Marines, it's civilians, beautiful women that won't talk to us and all this. And this, I go through a training, and halfway was two weekends. I came out of the training, and I had this blinding cognition. I'm a liar. What? Liar. That's against military code.
Of course.
So I get court-martialed. I'm a liar. I call Captain Abrams up. I lived in Waikiki. I go across the island to Kaneohe. Captain Abrams, I'm coming in. He says, what for? I said, I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And he says, it's about time. So I took the stand. He convened the little stenographer and all that, raised my hand. I told him everything. I incriminated myself. Every illegal activity I had done. I lost like 20 pounds, I swear to God, for about 5-hour deposition.
Yeah.
But I was basically bearing my past, as they teach you to do in EST and all this. Turn your past into something good, no matter what bad it is. And I sat there like this. I said, Captain Abrams, how many years will it take now? I expected 3 years, in jail.
They had you over at Da Nang 6 months later.
No. I said, how many years? He goes, Lieutenant, congratulations, you're free. Honorable discharge. I sat there on the stand. I was, honorable discharge. He says, thank you for telling the truth. And that's why I tell the story of the biggest crimes I ever pulled off was flying women in my helicopter, drunk as a swine, shooting deer. I machine gun goats. We did everything. We're nuts. But
Good go. I've heard your stories before. I have not heard this one before.
With an M60, it's a very good gun.
The M60 on goats. I'm going to guess the M60 would win. Yeah.
I know. But anyway, it's all of our mistakes hold a very vital lesson for your future if you learn from them. If you cover them up, like Bill Clinton, President Clinton, I didn't have sex with that woman. Oh, come on, Bill, He could have been one of the greatest presidents there was. But he couldn't admit he got a blowjob in the White House, which every guy wants anyway. Right. But he didn't tell the truth.
Can I ask you a question on this? Because this actually relates to one of the items I had for you. In one of the videos that I was watching of you just recently, you were talking about how the four different quadrants, right? And then the first one is what is the employee class, right? And you were saying it's not necessarily a bad thing to be that employee for a while, but one of the things you said was, what can I learn rather than what can I make from this? Like, instead of just saying, okay, I just want a good job with a lot of money, and that's going to be what's going to give me financial freedom. And too many people, that's the wrong mindset to have. But one of the things you said, and that maybe applies to what you just said here, is how do you come to the cognition, I guess, of how do I go from what can I make, what kind of money can I make, to what can I learn from this so I can take this and apply it to something else, just similar to what you were saying.
Yeah, if I could point the quadrants, E, S, B, I, it was my rich dad, was my best friend's father, never went to school. And he taught me everything about money playing Monopoly. And so we'd play Monopoly, and then he'd take me in the field, and he'd show me his 4 green houses. And today, his hotel is called the Hyatt Regency on Waikiki Beach. I saw that man. I'm 10 years old. I saw him go from, like, Kenny and I start with nothing. And he starts with little rental units, little green. My poor dad was a PhD, head of education, said, oh, your friend's father's a slumlord. Like, you're bad, you persecute the poor. But anyway, it's a matter of just making changes. So we're programmed from birth, go to school to get a job security. And the reason I wrote the book is because, as you know, this world is changing. We have artificial intelligence coming up. Teachers are going to get wiped out with AI. They're just going to get creamed. If you're a knowledge worker, you only work with your brain, you're finished. But if you're an auto mechanic, you have a future. So this world is changing so quickly, and I could see this coming. And in 2007, Kenny and I were smoking. We're doing really, really good, not smoking dope. Everything was hot. But Kenny turned to me one day and he says, this baby's coming down. He says, pull your cash back right now. And then 2008 hit, and then that guy, Ben Bernanke, what a criminal, he's the Federal Reserve chairman, he started printing trillions. And he destroyed the world without trillions of fake dollars pumped into the economy. Now, Ken and I got richer because all that real estate was now at bargain basement prices.
Yeah.
Right? It was like heaven. And then they give Ben Bernanke, who destroyed the world with fake money, same thing Nixon did in 1971, give him the Nobel Prize in economics. Our academic leaders are criminals. And today they're teaching kids about, sex transitioning and critical race theory. If you read critical race theory and you read Marx's books, Communist Manifesto, they're the same book. What they're talking about in the world is that there's white guys like you who persecute Asians like me. You know what I mean? All that crap. And
Instead, we all work for you now.
But, you know, I am so pro-education. But what the hell are we teaching people today?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. The Prussian model of education that we've used for the last 200 years, basically to generate a manufacturing workforce. And that was the reason for it, because before the digital revolution, the industrial revolution, that's why we were trying to do that over and over again. That's why you're in 11th grade math, and 11th grade algebra, 11th grade English, 11th grade science, and they don't move it around. Whereas, like what you said before, what's probably the wave of the future is we're going to have education based on videos, and then the teacher's going to be there for group projects and something like that. But because of teachers unions, it's probably a ways off before we get to that point.
Yeah, and I give this classic, and Rich Dad Poor Dad's the classic academic and professor. My poor dad was a professor. They're absolutely opposite people. You know, like I said, driving past my rich dad's little green houses, my poor dad's going, he's a criminal, he's a slumlord, he persecutes the poor. No, he provides housing. But my poor dad could not see that. He's a school professor. So we have this war going on in academics today. I just got nailed by Arizona State University, and I put on a program on February 8th of this year called Health, Wealth, Happiness. 37 protests, 37 professors want to shut us down. So you cannot say what you want to say. They said, you can say what you want to say, but we're going to tell you what to say. These are college professors. Something is rotten in our education system. It's gone Marxist.
Awesome. Well, before we get into more Marxist stuff,
Yes.
because
let's go ahead, women.
I'm just going to go right into the Ukraine war. Do you have any other questions you want to go over?
No, I just one of the things we were talking about on the jet just a little while ago is when you and I came up with the idea for this show. One of the things I wanted to discuss with you was you were describing that there was a difference between sort of being rich versus being wealthy.
Right.
And I think maybe we can also like involve some of the ladies in all of this as well, because all the ladies at this table right here have been, by the way, have been hand selected just for this panel right now, because you are all in some way business owners, or you're soon to be entrepreneurs. If you're not, I would guess you would say as an influencer, I guess you would technically be an entrepreneur, but you more or less take care of your family, and you more or less, you know, you impressed me anyways with being sort of like you're Gen Z. But you're sort of an anomaly in Gen Z as far as like where you want to go in the direction of your life right now. But everyone at this table has been, I mean, Ken was the added bonus, but I wouldn't even know you were coming until like 2 days ago. But all the ladies here at the table have been, are in some way involved in real estate. You own your own business. We were talking about taxes on the plane as well, and just thinking sort of the unexpected cost of being sort of a business owner and moving from, say, like the business class up, or say the small business owner up into the business class kind of thing. So we'll get everybody's sort of opinion on all of this. But what I wanted to start with first was when we first had this telephone conversation about this, was the difference between being wealthy versus being rich. Can you make that distinction for us?
Absolutely. Is that we're saying, you know, first of all, every man works hard for this. Or today, most men, not all men, but anyway. So women are like kind of the prize. And you said best, you know, men have to become, but women
just
are. And what you're saying, Rollo, I mean, your book, Rational Male, frickin' brilliant. You decodified it, and especially a young man should read it, but every young woman should read it also. Because we're talking about who was saying on the jet, you know, how do you know if the guy owns the jet? You don't. You know, and who's paying for the jet, you know, and all this stuff. So one thing I say, like you look in professional sports, a guy can be rich, you know, he can be 20. Now, Kenny were here in Vegas a while ago with the NBA, going to talk to the NBA players, because when they signed that pro contract at 19, was Caressa who said, "You're the best looking guy in the world." You know what I mean? You're 19 years old. You sign with the basketball team, and they want you. But 5 years later, 90% are bankrupt. So they're rich for that time. They have a nice car, nice house. They look good and all this, but they're broke because they don't have any wealth. And wealth comes from assets. And what I did in Rich Dad Poor Dad is kind of define an asset. An asset works for you whether you work or not. So we got cash flow. So Kenny and I are partners because we're both real estate guys, like my friend Donald Trump. Reason I like real estate is we use debt. So we're in deep debt, aren't we?
Yeah.
But the more debt we have, the more money we make, we don't pay taxes. That's real financial education. How does a guy like me or Trump or Kenny, we use $1 billion in debt to build all of these assets and pay no taxes legally? They'll never teach you that in school.
Would you say that comes from like a mindset though? Like I have gone from sort of the work-a-day world, from punching a clock and an hourly employee, to be getting into the gig economy, and so I left that world and I started becoming more of like an independent contractor kind of guy, and then I got into what I call the hustle economy right now. Which
That's the S. You see, you went from E to S.
Yeah.
Self-employed small business.
And my understanding of how money works changed dramatically when I went from the gig economy into doing what I'm doing right now, because now I am my own brand. I wake up in the morning and I go, you know what, today I'm going to make as much money today as the effort that I put into this day doing whatever it is, of writing the next book, doing the next show, doing the next promotion, actually helping other people do it as well, putting my money in investments into people who I think are like worthwhile investments. So my equity in the world, my money in the world, is really commensurate with my effort that I'm putting in today. Now, that was a quantum shift for me from the way I used to think about money to the way that I do now think about money. And I'm far more ambitious as a result of that, because my mindset changed about like understanding what, working as an employee to pay bills, to get things, as opposed to like putting money away and having a good paying job. Now, one of the questions that we asked most of you, I think, on the plane was this. When we were talking about how guys are today, and we see fewer men in the workforce. I just did a show on my own on the Rational Male just last Sunday. Was talking about this in response to like Brett Cooper and Matt Walsh and I guess Tommy Lahren as well, was talking about like how we have this new sort of generation of men who are NILFs, right? They're no income living with family, I think that's the acronym, right? And one of the things you guys all said is that especially you, was saying that I want to be with the guy who has ambition. Yes. And so the question that I wrote down, and I think you brought this up
on the plane.
Can you sense when a man has ambition? And I kind of want to go around the panel, the ladies here first, before I give you a follow-up. But can you sense when a guy has ambition? And if so, what are the cues that makes him seem like he has ambition?
Well, I think I'm pretty good at reading people. So I can usually tell, but I've also been surprised. Sometimes the quiet ones, they're planning something and they're not the type to, I guess, put it out there.
Grand gestures.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden they're doing something great. That to me is really impressive, because a lot of people start talking about it before it even happens, So I've been surprised, but I'm a good judge of character, and I think I can tell. Yeah.
For me, I've been able to notice ambition right away, just in the sense of the fact that they have their own opportunities that they're creating for themselves, and they're not relying on other people, or they're not having an air of entitlement and expecting other people to show up for them with these opportunities. They're going out and getting it themselves. And I'm a big believer in that. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so the type of people that I like to surround myself with, obviously, significant other especially, do they keep their word? Do they tell the truth? Are they honest about what's going on? Do they show up on time? Just like the little things that sometimes people take it for granted. But I think someone who's consistent like that means that they're showing up, they're committed, they're going to do that just as well as they'll do every other aspect of their life.
So I agree with her. The other thing I like to see is what they do for work. So someone ambitious to me is someone who doesn't have a 9-to-5.
I see. They're not an employee.
Yeah. So to me,
that's
like
E quadrant.
Yeah.
So I've met a guy, for example, and he said, "Well, I'll never be rich. I'm fine with what I'm doing." And to me, that says like you don't have ambition, so you're okay doing what you're doing now, and you're fine with never becoming anything more. So
Katrina's like, I'm going to be rich, so I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm trying to be rich.
I'm going to be rich.
Exactly. So yeah, so I look to see what they do. Like you said, if they show up on time, if they do what they say they're gonna do, if they're hustlers. So I'm attracted to a hustle. So if you might have a 9 to 5, but if you have other things going on and you're trying to just reach that next level is what kind of draws me in, I guess.
Let me interrupt is that a lot of men start with nothing, but exactly as you said, my friend, you have to become something. And you know, when Kenny and I started with nothing, but with ambition. When I met my wife Kim, I was, like I said, on the plane. I already crashed one business. I was $1 million down. I said, "Why'd you go out with me?" He said, "You have ambition." So you guys out there with nothing, ambition is attractive.
You know, I think there was a similar story. Hold that thought. There's a similar story, and I think it was Alex Hormozy who said this, and he had like a really bad, he took a really bad hit, almost like to the point of bankruptcy, and he was going to get married, I think, and he told his wife, or his now wife, he said, "Hey, look, you have if you want to leave, I'll completely understand why you would leave," and she didn't leave him because, and this is what I was getting to, is like, because she said he had potential. Now, maybe this is a question I'll put to you as well. Is ambition the right word? Should it not be a man's potential, or can you see a man's potential? Can you see a man's ambition? And are those two things like synonymous?
Well, everybody has potential, but do you have the ambition to pursue it? So I think you could tell if somebody is ambitious, right, where their mindset is by how much they talk and what they talk about. So, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So people, it's good to listen. If somebody just wants to talk about their stuff, their things, you can tell if somebody actually has their head on straight, because it's not just about your things. And you can't just be interested in what you have. You have to be interested in the things that get you there. So are you talking about, your businesses, your experiences, things that make you actually interesting? Because like some of the girls were saying, they're like, I don't really care if you have a Ferrari if that's your only personality trait. I think somebody said that on
like that's not enough.
A Ferrari is now a personality trait. A TikTok following is now a personality trait.
It's just not enough.
And just like they say with guys, where it's like, okay, so you get a nice car, or you acquire something nice and it becomes your entire personality. Guys don't like when girls use their looks as their entire personality, right? They want some depth to that as well. So you can't just come in here as a guy and be like, oh, well, I have nice things, you should like me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we talked about before too, that like they can rent it, right? When I went to law school in Miami, that's where I first learned, because I moved there from Arizona. I came from a small town in Arizona, went to college in Tucson, right? Moved to South Beach. I needed a helmet, by the way, because I was 21. I didn't know what was going on. And I remember meeting a guy who was a couple years older than me. I think he was like 26, and he had a green Lamborghini. And I was just like, wow. I was so impressed, because to me, I thought, you must have done something, you must have achieved something so successful to have that vehicle at 26 years old. That's what I was thinking, right? And he took me out a handful of times. And we were at the nightclub Mansion. You guys remember Mansion back in the day? It was at Mansion. And one of my best girlfriends from Miami, she's now an anesthesiologist, we're walking out, and they had left his Lamborghini up front. And she grabbed my hand and walks me to the back of the car. And she looks around the back and she goes, "That's what I thought." And I was like, What? Tell me, And she goes, "It's rented." And I was like, I didn't even know that you could rent a Lamborghini, right? And it had the yellow tag, which is like a permanent plate, I guess, which is what they put on these vehicles when they're rented. It blew my mind. I didn't know, but I'm glad it was a lesson I learned like early on. You just, sometimes people can fake it. You can fake it for a while.
You mentioned about do what you say you're going to do, and he talked about talking to the captain about being a liar. The cadet honor code: I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate anyone amongst us who does. That's what, and all four, and all the academies. That's what you have to do when you swear in. And so that's what he's talking about before. And that's one of the things in my company, we actually have those words in our bylaws, that actual idea. But that's one of the main things, is like ambition, but also a level of honesty and a level of integrity.
Okay, one more thing is today, we walk into the terminal from our jet. Maya's sitting there. She's early.
Yeah.
I'm going, holy mackerel.
My dad would be proud of you, by the way.
I was texting you 20 minutes before you told me to be there. Like, where do I go?
No, because nothing is more disrespectful to somebody than to be late. Like Kenny and I are never late. Or we text, we let people know. I have people show up, well, I got busy. That is so disrespectful, So I said, who is that goddess sitting there? She was early?
Yes.
I was going, that made point.
No, I said, my girls are punctual. Yeah, so I wanted to also point. So we've gone around the table here and talked about can you tell if a guy has some sort of ambition or has some sort of personal potential? Now, of course, today we're looking at statistics like we're looking at women who are enrolling in college right now, assuming college is sort of a litmus test here. At 60% versus 40% for guys right now, and by the way, it's going down. Also, when we throw that general term out there, we have to also take into account that we're looking at just the enrollment, the average enrollment. We're not talking about enrolled in what, and we're not talking about who graduates as well. So women actually graduate at a higher level than men do. Men tend to drop out of college at higher rates than women do as well. And then again, for like master's programs, for doctoral programs, it's one thing to get to go get a bachelor's degree. Women are going on to get master's and master's and doctorate degrees at a higher incidence than men are.
Wasn't it Richard Reeves that says you are 6 times more likely as a white woman to get a master's degree than as an African American man?
Exactly.
No, it was if you're an African American woman versus a white man, something like that. It was like some number like that where women were getting master's degrees at a far higher rate.
So my question to like everybody here, and I mean we can start with Ken or you guys as well, is why do you think that guys today aren't working or aren't incentivized to go out and become something? We talk about men must become, women just are. Why is it that in especially here in the United States and Western cultures in general, why is it that men are disincentivized to actually go and do anything, to make something of themselves, to not have that potential, to not have that? Is it a question of ambition, or is it just simply they're just sedated, fat, lazy, and just contented with what they're doing? And I thought maybe we'd go around the table if you want to give an answer on that.
I'll start.
And I know you have sons. So how many sons do you have?
2.
2, okay. And how old are they?
There's 24 and 21.
Okay.
And I think, there's a bunch of, I would say, defining points. And one of them is everyone gets a trophy. Mm-hmm. And I know that might not seem like a big deal, but I don't know about you guys, but when I was in sports as a young man, you get the captain and the MVP, and that's it. And you're always trying to strive.
I didn't get a trophy. I got a concussion.
Yeah. Right? So now I know these are subtle, slight little things, but I think there's a bit of an entitlement, that and a laziness.
Societal.
And there's a lot of young men are raised by their mothers, and you need a masculine energy. You really do. There's a reason. Obviously. My wife and I manage our kids very differently, right? Like she's more empathy, compassion, and I'm more heavy-handed, I would say. And I think that's a good balance in between. And I think that's missing in a lot of cases, the feelings and how, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's not important, but I think it's really moved that direction. And and then there's affluence, and people are soft. They're really soft. I mean, my parents didn't go to college. And the only way up for me was, there was only one way, and it was up. And so I think that, unfortunately or fortunately, my kids grew up very differently than I did. And so my struggle was, how do I not make them pussies? How do I not make them soft? And, and that's, luckily, my wife at the time, she was on board with that, basically that I think the male energy is a big, big missing piece.
Yeah.
And may I add to that?
Sure.
His sons are fantastic. And we've gone to this private island legally this time in Hawaii.
Yep.
And we camp and fish and hike with the Trump boys. And those guys are incredible young men.
Don and Eric, yeah.
And so his boys and Donald Trump's boys they're not spoiled, boy. They're bright, strong young men. The most impressive thing about the boys, I've hunted with them upstate New York, Don Jr. and Eric Trump. They go in back of the restaurant to talk to the help.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
He says, our mother taught us that.
Oh, yeah.
To be kind to everybody, rich or poor, be kind to them. We were shopping at Walmart in Hawaii, right?
Yeah, with Don Jr. That was funny. He whips out his black card.
At Walmart.
Well, all his stuff was lost, right? So he's like, "Oh shit, I got to go get hunting gear." So we all went in there, with, hunting with.
That's the best ways to get it.
Who doesn't hunt with Donald Trump? Yeah, or who doesn't go to Walmart with Donald Trump Jr.? So we were in there and going through the checkout. They didn't recognize him. All of a sudden, he flips his card out. She's like. She looks up.
Yeah, looks to see who he is.
And by the way, the whole week, he lived out of that bag. It said Walmart on it, and all this stuff was in there. And my kid's the same thing. I mean, there's no running water, there's no electricity or anything. They drop you off on an island, literally, and come back and get you like in a week. And it's awesome.
And we eat what we kill.
Yeah. I was gonna say we gotta make sure. So why do you guys think that guys are so ambitionless right now?
I would like to add to that. I agree with what you said, and that was a great point. That society is becoming softer. They're discouraging masculine energy. Society is also encouraging the feeling of entitlement. I'm a woman, so I'm entitled, or I am not heterosexual, so I'm entitled, or I'm not Caucasian, so I'm entitled. And so that's encouraging people to just, we were discussing this earlier, the entitlement. So I think that's a big part of it. Also, 20, 30 years ago, as a man, you felt, this is my job, this is my responsibility to have a wife, to have kids, and to provide. Now, women are becoming more independent. We don't need men. A lot of women, that's kind of the
mantra.
That's going. So men are like, well, and it's, the weaker men, the strong men realize, well, it won't affect
they're
them.
They're stepping up,
Yeah, so I feel like we've discussed that as well. And social media has also, social media has made it so easy to fake it. They've made it so easy for you to look good looking and successful and all these things. So some people just don't have the ambition to actually go there. That's enough for them to appear that way.
Perception.
Perception.
Exactly.
Well, execution's key on everything, obviously. But I think especially what it's done now is just kind of the denigration of the nuclear family of having masculine, having feminine, and having that all within one household. I grew up, my father was a Vietnam veteran, U.S. Air Force, and then DOD. And my mom would stay at home with me until I was in 6th grade. And then right around the time I started talking back was when she was like, bye, I'm gonna start working, My mom, to this day, she still has a hair salon down in Arizona. And I just think as a child, when you have those two very different types of influences in your life, right? And you need those at different times in your life as well throughout your entire journey of growing up. I just think that, with this kind of celebration of willy-nilly, everyone can just do whatever they want at any time. And if for whatever reason you can't handle it yourself and you have too many kids by yourself, just ask the government for more money. That is not real life. That's not sustainable. It's not going to create a well-functioning society. And so, something as simple as getting back to the basics.
Right, and we were speaking about ambition. I think there's a difference between ambition and action. I've met a lot of guys who I'm like, wow, that's a really good idea he has. Seems like he's going to do it. Very articulate. And then I run into him 5 years later. He still has the same pitch.
Right. He's on his 3rd OnlyFans management agency. He goes, he's trying to make a new NFT for elephants, and
they lack the confidence or the security to take the risk to actually do it. But they have all these great ideas, so that's why you
follow
can
through.
The follow through is what a lot of people are having a tough time with, because these days everybody's under extra scrutiny or under a magnifying glass, and so a lot of people are taking these risks and these actions, maybe again to do with social media and the insecurities around that.
Maya, why do you think the guys are kind of say lethargic? Let's just say uninspired, maybe.
Okay, so I know around the time frame of the 90s, right? So late 90s, early 2000s is the kind of the age group we're talking about right now.
You weren't even born yet.
I was born in the early 2000s, but I know that they implemented the idea of everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
So
participation trophy generation. Yep.
Everybody. So women nowadays are becoming the men they want to be with. We talked about that last time. But why? Why do women feel the need to take on this role? So the men haven't been. Boys and girls need to be raised differently. It's something I feel, because there's different roles. Guys, I feel like you have to be a little bit harder on them. And typically the guys were the breadwinners. The guys were the only ones supporting the family. And now it's relationships should be 50-50. This girl should go in on it with you. So guys are becoming extremely feminine, and
Rollo, we don't have a show anymore.
Gosh,
we just quit.
I guess we don't have to do tomorrow night.
We don't have to do a show anymore.
Well, sorry.
As much as they're doing that, and the parents are saying that's okay, and girls should go 50-50, and the government's influencing it as well. They're saying it's okay to be feminine. You don't have to be masculine. It's toxic masculinity, is what they tell you. So now the women, since these men are not being men, are stepping up and having to become the men that they want to be. They are going to college more. They're becoming, more financially free, because there's less and less guys willing to provide that, because Everybody wants the mentality of the girl's going to go 50-50 with you.
There's a divorce attorney that I follow on Instagram, and he was talking about how he's seeing a lot of cases now where women are coming in initiating the divorce because they're tired of being the one who takes care of the kids, gets the breakfast ready, gets them off to school, goes off to go work, and then goes grocery shopping and comes home and makes the dinner. So like she's literally doing everything, everything, right? That requires for the household, for the relationship, for the family, all these things. And to me, all that says is like, guys, you still have an opportunity here. Just step up. It's not that we want to just like take over and run everything, right? And plan everything and do all the things. Are we capable of doing that? Yes. But that doesn't mean that we want to be doing that.
I'll give you my take on that in a minute,
Ding,
but
ding, ding.
why do you think that men are pussies today?
So I kind of agree with everything you guys have said,
Okay.
but the one thing that I was thinking about is like how you guys mentioned back in the day, you know, it was just men who were going to college. So if the numbers of women entering college now are higher, that to me means that maybe it's not that men aren't trying as much, but maybe women are trying more is why the numbers are different. The other thing is what Robert had said earlier is it just men are finding other ways to make money instead of going to college. So
And they're being educated to do other things besides go to college. And they're also being educated in somewhat like going to an elite university, what kind of a scam it can be for some of them to rack up massive amounts of debt to try to become an accountant or a lawyer.
Say. Yeah. Back then, you know, the college tuition was much less than what it is now. I think it's gone up 200% at this point.
Yeah.
At least.
I paid $6,000 a year to go to UT Austin.
I pay $6,000 a month
Yeah.
now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of it is historical as well. I mean, what we were just talking a moment ago, like in 1971 is when we went off the gold standard. I've just been doing a series on my own. I'm actually considering writing a short book on this, but it's like what happened in 1971. If you go to like the decade of like 1965 to 1975, and you look at all of the social changes that have happened since the sexual revolution and the advent of hormonal birth control, once we took away the sort of responsibility of pregnancy and starting a family by inventing an invention that will prevent pregnancy. And if you look at all the things that happened since then, you see the rise in divorce goes up along with the use of hormonal birth control. We have no-fault divorce initiated by Ronald Reagan in 1968 in California, which then progressively through the 70s and 80s, state by state by state, they begin to adopt no-fault divorce. We go off the gold standard. We have Roe v. Wade in 1972, 73,
72,
somewhere around there. We get Title IX comes
74.
up in 74. Women can now have their own bank accounts, and they can have credit cards that they could never have before because now we're on a fiat currency as a result of more women coming into the workplace, becoming more independent. And by the way, when I said women are becoming the men that they want to marry, that's not Rollo Tomasi who came up with that line. That is Gloria Steinem in 1970 that came up with that. We're still dealing with the ramifications of what had happened from 1965 all the way up through 1975, and then of course into the later decades as well. But you can trace all of the decline in marriage. You can see where that goes. You can see the rise in divorce. All goes back to one point, 1965, right when hormonal birth control happened. And so when we see now, we have this, four generations from the sexual revolution. And we have the entitlement of like everybody has to be egalitarian. We have the participation trophy generation. Everybody's got to be 50-50 and equal. Women refer to their husbands as partners, not as their husbands or wives. It's now my partner. I have to be very careful of saying this is my partner right here because that means something different than like if I'm saying this is my partner.
It took us 30 minutes.
So
it took us 30 minutes to figure it out.
Exactly. So like I have to be, like I introduce him or I introduce Miguel as my partner. I'm like my business partner. Really. But the very fact that that's funny and I have to do that means that there's been sort of a shift, a paradigm shift in just our attitudes as a result of just this progression of things, the social changes that have happened since 1965 to 1975 right there. So that's where I would start to begin with. The other part that I would say is that because women biologically need to have long-term security, longer than they have the ability to consolidate on that long-term security. When women get to be about, like, say, 29, 30, 31 years old, that's when they're sort of like saying, okay, well, now I got to find a guy who, for the long term, I got to find a guy who wants to have kids. I got to find a guy who wants to get married and wants to, go off and start a family into the future, kind of like good old, grandma and grandpa did. And I'm going to steal Aaron Clary's line one more time, is we live in a post-marriage society right now because we're still trying to make this 20th century ideal of marriage work in the 21st century, where we have women who say, you know what, I can't trust guys to provide me with long-term security. So as a result, I've got to go get my bag. I got to go get my money. I got to go make sure I've got my education. If that means I got to go take out student loans, that's what I'm going to do. If I have kids and I can't afford them, maybe I'll go to the government, or maybe I'll just get a baby daddy and get alimony and child support. We have moved from a marriage-based format or model of raising children to a child support-based model of raising children in this era right now. And so that also contributes to the fact that we can't find a guy who's got potential or who's got any kind of ambition, because these guys, first of all, they don't know how to be men. They think that anything that is conventionally masculine is bullying or it's hazing, or they don't know how to, like, rib guys or how to actually interact with men these days, because we have women who are assuming that masculine role rather than assuming that feminine role because they feel they have no other choice. And that was my next question to you guys. Do you feel like you had to get into doing what you do and providing for your own security because if you didn't do it, you can't trust a man to do it for you?
Are you talking about once you're already in the situation, or are you thinking that?
Well, just as a life plan, and I know how old you are. I'm not going to bring it up, but she's the youngest at the table right now, and I don't know who the oldest is here right now. It might be you.
Probably me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, like, her life plan. When we were talking on the bus, you're saying I have an idea of where I want to go and where I want to be. You're 21 right now. What do you want to be when you're 25? When you're 30? My daughter right now is 25 years old. So where do you want to be at 25? At 30? At 35? Do you have to compensate for the fact that you can't trust men to be men raised by a sort of a nuclear family? Is it because you just have this inherent distrust, or is it just because you're just like, you know what, I just got to do it for myself?
I don't think I'm thinking distrust, and even with her, I don't think she's thinking about a man. She's just worrying about herself.
Yeah,
if a man comes along
Yeah.
later, great. That's I think how it should be. I think we should be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and independent. It does make relationships more difficult when you are that woman, because your masculine energy is increased. A lot of times it inadvertently decreases the masculine energy in the man, and that's something you have to be careful with as a businesswoman in your relationships that I've struggled with. But yeah, it's never been like that. It's just, I'm just worried about myself. And if a guy comes along and adds value to my life, great. But it's not that I don't trust men. It's that I'm just independent.
Yeah, it's not an issue of trust. I mean, I think it's a personal ambition, right? I mean, I have girlfriends who they got married right out of high school, and they were so excited to be a mom, and they were so excited about that, and they loved their life. And I have other girlfriends who went on to be doctors and attorneys, and they own law firms, and that is their life as well. So it's a totally personal decision, yeah, in relation to, like, what is it that you want in your life? And I think that's what's cool about the time that we live in, and certainly the country that we live in, is that, like, you do have that ultimate freedom and flexibility of truly deciding whatever it is that gets you excited, makes you feel purposeful. And for me, I do have to bring a lot of masculine energy into running my businesses because I'm making decisions, I'm putting out fires. You're holding a lot of masculine energy here, but at the same time, I do have a lot of feminine energy because I'm just I'm feminine by nature, but I've never tried to, like, downplay my femininity, even in a business setting. And relationships that I've had, I date very masculine men, right? Whether they're former MMA fighters or they have, like, or former military, like, they're like a man's man, right? They're a guy's guy. And that's just what I'm attracted to, because I have to bring so much masculine over here in the workplace. I need to be in feminine.
Do you think that a guy that you would be attracted to has to out-masculine you for you to be feminine?
Well, I will say this, and this is just a byproduct of growing up in a military family home. I could never bring home a guy to my home that like doesn't know how to shoot a firearm. My dad would just, I mean, my dad passed in 2020, but he would just be appalled. He would be so upset. So little things like that, you know, knowing how to change a tire,
Drive a stick shift.
Driving a stick shift, absolutely.
Knowing how to set up an L-shaped ambush. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's just the Marines.
Yeah,
That's just the Marines.
exactly. No, so you know, things like that. I think just as a byproduct of growing up in a home where my dad was very much a guy's guy, that's absolutely what I'm attracted to.
Do you have brothers?
And everyone
Do you have brothers too?
I'm an only child.
You're an only child. Wow.
Do any of you have kids? Any of you girls? So I think that shows you this is the path we chose. If I wanted to get married and have kids like we're supposed to traditionally, you know, 30 years ago, I would have done that 10 years ago. That's not the path I chose. Has nothing to do with who I married. It was my personal choice.
So I think that a lot of people have a goal to get married and to have kids, especially in their 30s, like you said. And I used to say, you know what, like, I'm looking for a man who is, you know, who's going to make me better, add value to the relationships, whatever. But I don't necessarily want kids. I don't have to get married. I don't have that goal. I just want to be happy. And if it happens, it happens. So when I used to say that to men, they would instantly be like, well, you know, you'd be a great mom. I think we should have a kid. You know, it's like, well, no. And it's like men are pressuring women to have kids and have families as well. It's not just the women doing that nowadays. So now, instead of me saying that, I just say, I don't want kids or family or marriage because I don't want them to have that goal as well.
Katrina, are both your parents Russian?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in like a traditional lifestyle where did your parents want you to have children early?
I don't know. Like, I'm not close with my family, so
Okay.
I don't get pressured by anyone.
Got it.
I meant to ask that. Like, I think I know your situation. Your dad's no longer in the picture, but your mom, you're very tight with your mom. You live with your mom.
My dad's still in my life. He just lives, you know, far away.
And
from me.
you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have two brothers, so they're twins, so they're 10 years older than me.
Oh, really? Okay. And you have how many brothers and sisters? Are your parents still
I'm
together?
the only child, too.
And your parents are still together?
No.
No, they're not. And if I ever asked you this.
My parents are still together, 35 years.
And you have brothers, sisters?
Older sister.
One older sister. What about you?
Oh, you know about my younger brother?
I don't know. Well, I know about your brother, but I know you about your brother. But like,
conspiracy theorist.
but like your parents, are they still together?
My dad passed away in 2006, but yeah, they were together
they were
for
up to that
40-something years before, from 74 until 2006, they were together, 42 years.
Yeah, I'm just wondering that because what you were saying before is and I've said this in my books as well, is like I believe that like men and women are innate, evolved, natural complements to one another. The masculine balances out the feminine. The strengths of my masculine, you know, compensate for my wife's, you know, weaknesses as a woman, and then vice versa too. So it's a complementary nature, I think, also physiologically, evolutionarily speaking. But what more to your point when you're saying like there needs to, I think maybe it was you was saying there needs to be sort of this. There needs to be a model for masculinity and a model for femininity for people to understand, you know, to get a good, healthy understanding of both of those. Because people don't know this about me. I was raised by a single father. So, which is kind of an anomaly, you know, especially for the 70s, you know, back in the time. But I have a younger brother, and my younger brother and I were raised by a single father at that time. My dad, by the way, was old school. So, like, seriously, when I was like in my teenage years, 14, 15 years old, my dad would, like, on a Saturday morning, I couldn't be like 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. My dad would like knock on the door, you know, get up. And I'm like, well, for what? You know, it's the weekend, right? He's like, just get up and do something. Do something productive, right? I'm like, what? It just doesn't matter. Just get up and do something productive, right? And so I sort of had this, even to this day, I'm always worried that the door is going to be knocked on. My dad's been passed away since 2010, but it's this, and maybe it was just because I didn't really have that feminine side as, you know, throughout most of my life. My parents split up when I was like 8 years old, I think. And so as a result of that, I think maybe that also sort of has, you know, course corrected me, you know, over the years as far as, you know, being raised by just a very strong, if not overbearing masculine presence in my life. But what, you know, more to your point, was it like 42% of children are born out of wedlock in the United States right now to single mothers. And so we've sort of had this sort of paradigm shift in the sense that we're raising families. That was my next question here, is like, for having, weak men, or let's say ambitionless men. I don't want to say weak men, because I think guys still have a potential to like make something more of themselves. I really honestly think that guys, if they just get on TRT or something, like start working out and feeling better about themselves, doing, changing habits and stuff like that, they can have a better outlook, more ambition, maybe some more potential. But as a result of men sort of not living up to an old 20th century standard, how is that impacting, like, say, family structure today? And what is that doing to us as a nation? Because we always hear how there's this like concerted effort to destroy the American family right now. And while that may be true, I think it really probably started in the post-sexual revolution era. But where we're at right now, and this is maybe more to your point as well, is that we like to look at sort of outside forces as like being attacking the American family structure, which, by the way, is what the nation is built on right now. But is it outside forces, or is it internal? Is it the choices that young men and young women are making today that is sort of putting us into this post-marriage society?
I think some of it's internal. I think a lot of it's internal. I one of the things I did when my kids were little was coached. I coached football, basketball, baseball. And so I had the unique opportunity to watch the parents drop them off, pick them up, meet them at the games and all that stuff, which is a whole different topic. But the point is I could see, if you're just paying attention, which kids were striving for attention, male attention, which ones didn't have it, which were dropped off by their moms or their dads and didn't have it, and all that kind of stuff. And you can see it in their behavior at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. You can see all of that. And so a lot of that is based on, that's part of the reason why I'm fighting for this financial freedom stuff, because at the end of the day, if parents have financial choices, which sometimes they do not, they don't have to be in those situations. And, unfortunately, when people go through divorce, most of the time it actually affects a woman personally, financially, even worse.
Yeah.
Which is why the courts kind of err that way. Well, it shows up. It shows up and it sucks, but it sucks for the woman. Because the woman is now forced in a situation where they're working and they're juggling daycare and all this kind of stuff. And then I would see it, on the football field and the baseball field. And then those kids turn into working men, and all of a sudden they're running businesses and they're pussies. They're soft and they've been bounced around in the system, whatever that system is.
I think it was I believe it was Camille Paglia who said that, we raise our boys as if they're defective girls. That was her. Despite what anybody else says, that was actually Camille Paglia who brought that up.
That's pretty crazy.
And so we raise our boys as if they're defective girls, because the education system, as you guys were saying before, is predominantly right now 77% of you, at least in the United States, 77% of the teachers you are going to have throughout your lifetime, from preschool to post-grad school, are going to be female, and they are accustomed to teaching in a female manner. And so what happens is we have these boys who are raised as defective girls who are now men who are defective women.
Yep.
And I think that might be a good starting point as to trying to course correct. Go ahead.
May I interrupt here? Is it possible to get a product shot here? Because I want to talk about if possible.
Sure.
Yeah, there we go. We're looking at it right now. Can we zoom in on this? Can we zoom in? There we go. There you go. There's the product.
So the thing.
How do we course correct?
My wife Kim and I created this board game in 1996 for this very reason. We got married. We were financially free in 10 years. We didn't have jobs and anything like that. And people kept asking, how'd you do it? So we created this cash flow board game, but this is the point I want to make, especially for men as well as women, because Kim is genius, right?
Yeah,
she's
100%.
a genius. But over here is when you go to school, you go to the banker, your banker doesn't care what your grade point average was. Banker doesn't care what college you went to. Your banker wants to see this. They want to see your financial statement. Every woman should ask a guy for a financial statement, audited, by a CPA and all that stuff. But this is what they're not teaching in school. So here's a mechanic. You think, well, he doesn't make much money. It doesn't make any difference. So the board game here was created because Maria Montessori says what the hand does, the mind remembers. So much you can't learn to play golf reading a book or taking classes on it. So I was taught everything playing Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1031 tax deferred exchange into red hotels. My rich dad started with nothing, and today his family owns the Hyatt Regency in Waikiki Beach. He started with nothing. Ken and I started with nothing. So here you have a mechanic, and this is what the game teaches. It's a financial statement. What they should teach you, what your banker wants to see is your financial statement. Income, expense, assets, liabilities. It's the basics. So the mechanic will present this to the banker and say, this is it. You present that to a banker, the banker's going to say yes or no for debt. Really that simple, right, Kenny?
Well, that's where the rented Lambo shows up.
Yeah.
Under liabilities.
Well, he's a mechanic.
No.
It's a great board
It's an
game.
expense. He's a liability.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the liability.
He's outta
The
here.
Lambo's an expense.
This board
He probably
game
wrote
is
it off, too.
awesome. Like,
So, if I could continue with this, for men especially, because women are okay, they're kicking butt right now. If you're a mechanic and you're going, how come I'm, I didn't go to college and all this, that's what the game is for. You play this game, it changes the neural pathways in your brain. In other words, when you play golf, great game, Putting is different than chipping, than driving, and all that stuff. But what happens if you learn playing golf from a book, you can't do that because the neural pathways aren't connected here.
Right.
So Kim and I created this board game here, especially for men. Man up. Get your finances in shape. Women too. But the more you play this game, it changes your mind. It's like I'll never beat Tiger Woods because he practices a little bit more than I do. And what happens is the men and women who practice more, that's how you learn. You make mistakes. But in our school systems, if you make mistakes, you're punished. So the purpose of the cash flow board game is for you to make mistakes so you rewire your neural pathways. Just like every time you miss a putt, you go, oh, and you go back in there. Right, Kenny?
Yeah. So as you guys probably know, my kids started playing this when they were 6, 8 years old, and everybody asked. I've never given them a nickel.
No.
I mean, ever. Like I've taught them how to make money from the time they were 6, 8, 10 years old, and they've had multiple businesses.
His kids are great. They're out there on the golf course making money. I'm going, geez,
Well, it's empowerment for them. It brings them confidence, and even to this day, they just figure stuff out, and they have their own way of making cash, and it's just life lessons, and unfortunately, it's just not taught in school. So it can be taught in stuff like this game.
Yeah, and I love that it's like gamified too.
Yeah,
So what the game we hosted at our real estate brokerage.
Yes, thank you.
We do a cash flow game night, real estate investor cash flow game night, and we bust out Robert's game, and people come over to our real estate brokerage and they'll come play it. And it's cool because it's actually very applicable. So like when you draw a certain card, you'll get like you roll the dice, right? And you move the pieces. If you land on, for example, opportunity, you can choose if you're going to pick a big opportunity or a small opportunity. And that's based on your risk tolerance, right? And so you can see the players around the table who always pick the small opportunities. And it'll be like, invest in a blah, blah, blah stock and your ROI is 2.1%. And they're like, okay. And you're just like, I want the big opportunity, right? So like every time I play, I always choose the big opportunity, and it'll be like, here's this rundown 4-unit, fourplex, whatever. And it's like your potential ROI on it is a lot larger, but maybe you're going to have to invest a little bit more than if you would have bought this stock.
And what she's talking about, the person is rewiring the neural pathways to think like an investor. And the reason I want to talk, you and I talk about it, is what you say is that the two. Explain the two types of people that kind of hate you. I mean, I love Rollo because when he wrote the Rational Male, I go, I should have read this when I was younger.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Women who hate Rollo and men who hate Rollo. So would you explain that?
I quite honestly, I run into more backlash from guys than I do women right now, because I think that I think men today, especially younger men today, don't like to have they don't like to be taken out of their comfort zone. We were just talking about how, like, I was just trying to ask you guys, like, how can we course correct here with like re-incentivizing guys to want to become something? Yes. It's the guys who are just sort of go along to get along. It's the guys who, like, we constantly get this all the time from our haters we'll probably get it tomorrow, actually. But we get it from guys who are always trying to find some sort of rationale to say why they don't want to play the game, why they don't want to. They want to, like, men going their own way, black pill doomers, the guys who are sort of despondent, sort of nihilistic right now. It's real easy to sort of fall into the trap of thinking that everything's very depressing, everything's pessimistic, everything's very cynical right now. Because it's so just as easy as it is to fake cues of high value by renting a Lamborghini, it is also very easy to create rationales as to why I don't want to play this game anymore. Why bother? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. Why would I want to play this? Why would I want to go ask this pretty girl out on a date? Why? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter, because she's going to go find, Giga Chad over here who's going to sweep her off her feet because I don't make as much money and I'm not as, jacked as he is and I'm not as tall as this guy is. So why am I going to expend that effort for minimal return on my investment, for having to investing in myself so that I can actually reap the rewards, whatever those may be, whether that's women, or hopefully it's all of the above, women, money, money, muscles, game, that kind of stuff. But I think that the guys who get pissed off at me the most is I hold up a mirror. And they have to want to look into that mirror, because I can't make them do that. But I think that's when I talk about objective truth, so I talk about empirical evidence, and when we get into the selfish gene or evolutionary psychology, and we break things down into nuts and bolts, it conflicts with their ego investments in, I don't want to have to play the game anymore, so fuck that Rolo guy. I don't want to have, he's just trying to grift and take all these guys' money. And they'll say the same thing about you and everybody else here, because they don't want to play the game, because they don't see any point in playing the game, because they don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze. Now, women are the same thing. Is like when I'm holding up a mirror and I'm saying, look, you've become the man that you wanted to marry. It's this sudden realization like, oh shit, I have catered my life to this one standard, and now the more successful I become, the higher a value a woman I become, the higher a value man I have to get to be commensurate with with what I want out of life. So if we have women on Access Vegas on damn near every show, and they're like, they don't want to get married, they don't want kids, because they're like, I make X amount of dollars off of OnlyFans, that the average guy is never going to be able to match that kind of money, plus half again, whatever it would be. So they are economically unattractive. And so it comes down to, am I really in love with this guy? Is it an emotional thing? And sometimes that emotion stuff doesn't balance with the fact that he is not as ambitious as you guys are, or he's never going to be the guy that you deserve, the man of your dreams, because he's never going to make more than you, because you've already established yourself at such a high level that most guys are never going to be able to match that.
So that's why I'm back up. When everybody should read The Rational Male, male or female, because what you said, the women who hate you are very successful women. It's really amazing. But also, the men that hate you are like you call them betas or whatever they are. They're very comfortable. They have job security. They're good fathers and all this stuff. And Ken and I talk about it all the time. We get the same vibes now because your book made us aware of it. Why do guys hate us? I mean, Ken and I are entrepreneurs. We start companies doing this, doing that, have our own jets, drive Ferraris, and with certain men just don't like us. Right?
Yep. Just for the record, I don't own a Ferrari.
But you don't have to, my friend.
I have a Camaro. I don't have a Ferrari.
Yeah, it's very difficult, because they're going to look back at their life, and if there is no excuse, then they must lay bare the fact that it could have been them and it wasn't them, and the only reason why it wasn't them was because of their excuses.
Right.
Whenever, I teach a networking course, and I always get often from either a man who's been cheated on, or someone who's short, or someone who's of an ethnicity where he thinks he has a disadvantage in networking or with women, and then I consistently show him example after example, testimonial after testimonial of exactly the person he is complaining about having incredible success with his work, with his dating life, whatever. And instead of this is a really interesting one. You remember the people who thought the world was going to end July 21st, 2012. Do you remember this, right? After the world didn't end, they didn't apologize. They didn't go, oh, our bad, we got this wrong. They were even more sure of themselves. They doubled down on it, even though they were completely proven wrong. And what I found is the same thing. Is like when you show someone something that's where they're completely proven wrong, instead of admitting that they were wrong, they double down, and sometimes they even throw hate at you. If you were to prove to a religious person, hey, the God that you believe believe in doesn't actually exist, they don't say, hey, thank you for doing that. They strap a bomb to themselves and blow you up. That's essentially what happens. So yeah, people do not like when you lay them bare. But the thing is, here's the trick, right? Doesn't matter who the president is, I'm still going to be rich. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to be in shape. I don't really care what the political affiliation or what sexual proclivities the president or the vice president have. I'm still going to be rich. I don't give a shit. And that should be the mentality that you have no matter what.
Point of origin.
No matter what. Yes. Ben Bernanke, piece of crap, whatever. I'm still going to be rich, and I don't care. And that kind of has to be the mentality.
How about this? Market booms or bust, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Right, Kitty?
That's right.
And the point I want to get here, if you're a man and you want women like this, man up. I would play the cash flow game until you're hurt. Start cash flow clubs. Play the game, because this is all Kenny and I do. The middle of the game board here, they don't have that guy here. The middle of the game board.
You can shoot it. Okay. He can zoom.
The middle of the game board is what happens when you go to school. You go to school, get a job, and you wind up in this rat race here.
Which I think is okay for a little while, right? You use the money. I worked in a law firm. You use the money to fund your first business, and then you keep scaling.
You think like an entrepreneur. I'm talking to the men right now. You will not find many men who will think that way. So the point that
they think contentment, yeah.
Well,
that's what they think they are.
They were trained to be in the rat race, job security. I have a job. I'm a good father. I have 3 kids. I'm doing what I should. And the wife leaves them for Harry down the street or whatever it is. And then they go, "What happened to me?" But the purpose, you look at the rat race, is what happens when you go to school. What Ken and I do is we operate on the fast track, and all of these deals on the fast track, they're accredited investors. I mean, you have to be rich to do these deals. So the purpose of the cash flow game is to teach you to get your finances in shape so you can talk to your banker, because this is what your banker wants to see, not your grade point average. My Ferrari has 1.9 GPA on my Ferrari license plate, just to go F you to the
1.9.
Yeah, 1.9 GPA.
That's like Fresh having like CEO on the back of it, on the back of his McLaren.
My classmate calls me up. He goes, 1.9. You weren't even that high. But when you're on the fast track, this is what counts. So you could be a mechanic, business manager, airline pilot, police officer. If you're a man or a woman, you don't have to be trapped in that rat race. And that's what Kim and I got together. And Kenny knows, man, Kim's brain.
I think I don't know if you guys saw this. I think it was November of 2021. Maybe it was later than that. But I remember Matt Walsh going on Dr. Phil, which I have, and the second show's out now, by the way.
All right.
And so I know what being on that show is like. But what you have Matt Walsh on there, and he's on there with these 2 trans, gentlemen there, but the bearded lady who is there basically, and he's on there with some college professor, like a gender studies college professor, and his question, of course, is what is a woman? He did a whole documentary on this on Daily Wire, and I was watching this. I actually did a full episode on this on my own channel, where I was looking at the riffing on the back and forth between the two of them, and it kind of struck me. He says, you know what? You will never get a definitive answer from this guy, this biological male who wants to pretend or wants everybody else to reaffirm that he's actually a female. And you can put lipstick and nails on and everything, but the guy's still got a beard, still very masculinized, and still has the lower voice and everything else. Yeah, we laugh at it, but the thing is that when you're asking what is a woman, and you're asking for that objective definition of what it is, you're asking for empirical data. You're asking for objectively what is a woman. And they'll say, well, it might be this, it might be that. And then they're giving you a subjective emotional answer as a result, or as in response to an empirical objective question. The problem with that whole line of questioning is that the guy who is trying to tell you or is asking you for an objective answer to what is a woman from a person whose identity is based on this subjective definition, what it would force them to do is you'll never get that answer from them, because what it will do is it will force them to give you an objective answer, and from there you can say, well, if that's what a woman is, that's not what you are. Okay, because you've just given me an objective. So it has to stay ambiguous. It has to stay subjective and relative and everything else. So when you ask me, why is it that guys hate me so much? The reason is I'm asking and I'm putting out an objective definition for gender dynamics as it is. And when your identity, your literal identity, is based on this subjective, like, a man can be like this and a man can be more feminine, and we only celebrate masculinity when it looks like femininity, and I don't really know what a man is, but I'm going to define it for myself, and I'm going to say what being a masculine guy is. What you're doing is, when you ask them for that objective definition, what happens is they now have to reassess their lives.
Right.
They have to reassess their entire lives that built up their identity. So when you ask someone to do that, they will hate you for that.
Yes.
Well, that's what Robert's holding the position on. I think there's reality and there's truth, and there's a big difference. And I think what happens is Robert's trying to break people's reality on what financial freedom is, what finances is. Just like Jordan Peterson's holding his position, Robert's holding his position, and that's what everybody's frustrated about. Is because they have their own reality, their own bias, their own software running in their own head. They have to unlearn and then relearn. That's what they have to do, and that's what we all had to do.
We don't deal in shoulds. We deal in is.
That's right.
Yeah. May I add this part? This is the point I'm getting at. Is called jealousy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's when we're talking earlier at the airport about our schools want to teach us that you're a victim. The rich oppress you, the white guys oppress you, women are bitches and all that. They need you to be a victim. So our schools are teaching us to be victims. So when Ken and I pick up the vibes as we drive around our Ferraris and our own jets and all this, it's called jealousy. And what I'm saying is they can have it too. Women can have it too, but the reason Rollo is so brilliant, he says there's a price you're going to pay. There's just fewer men. Is that
for
correct?
the decisions that you made for yourselves.
There's fewer men that can keep up with you. That was brilliant, Rollo.
Thank you.
I have a question. Did you, before flying in Vietnam, did you go to survival school?
Of course.
Okay. What's Marine Corps survival school like back in the 1970s?
Horrible.
What, can you describe it for them?
No, they threw me in the Gulf of Mexico. The temperature was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. They drag us through the water to simulate parachute training like this. They're dragging us.
Was this
through the
Pensacola?
water. Huh?
Was this Pensacola? Yeah.
You got to put your hands up because your hands can't get cold.
Yeah.
And you have the parachute straps.
Yeah.
And you got to go, boom, boom. You've got to get those straps off, but you don't get both off, you drown.
Yeah.
And so the reason I crashed, 3 times, and my staff sergeant went down 6 times, is they train us in real life. This game simulates real life.
Yeah.
So if we got the bottom ones off, but the top ones not off, we drowned.
Yeah.
And then they throw us ashore, and then the 6 of us, 6 or 7 men, and they chase us with guns through the woods. We have no food, no water.
17 days, bro.
Oh my!
Naked and afraid.
Eat rabbits.
The real version.
Ants, you never knew ants tasted so good.
No, but this is the lesson. It was the best lesson I ever learned. We're starving
Yeah.
and we're being chased and we're cold. We have no shelter. We're going to cover ourselves with leaves and dirt. And we finally shot this raccoon. So this little raccoon comes out, and there's 7 guys. And some of these pussies had never skinned an animal. You know what I mean? So I've skinned, I skinned this little raccoon. It gets smaller. And so the little raccoon is that small. We found a tin can. We built a little fire, and we had to boil them for trichinosis. It teaches all that. And by the time it pulls out the water, it's even smaller. And you got 7 guys. And then what we started to do was cut the thing in pieces. 7 guys. I heard guys growling.
Bro.
That piece is that's my piece. No, that's your. We turned into that raccoon.
Cavemen.
Yeah, we turned
Lord
into
of the
pure
Flies all of a sudden.
We turned into pure animals.
Scarcity, yeah.
That fast. It was 3 days when you have no food, water, shelter, and you're cold and you're being hunted.
I just had a great idea. We need to get him and Dan Bilzerian here together so they can swap survival stories from when they were training.
Bro, SEER school sucks, bro. Like that's like when you're in the middle of SEER school, like there's a point where you're like, if I knew I had to do this, I wouldn't join the military. And if I ever have to do this again, then I would never come back. But you're like, I can't quit, because if I quit, then you don't get to go to your unit.
And look at the commercial. That's what the game was to simulate real life before you go into real life.
Yeah.
And anybody can be rich with the right education. You look at some of the smartest guys on the world. Bill Gates never finished college. Jobs never finished college.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So this idea of going to college, all you do is get student loan debt today, and you learn to be a tranny. Like, my God, give me a break.
Mark that. Mark that.
Cancel. No, it is funny. Actually, Elon Musk also was getting a PhD in material physics and did not finish it. So he has all this knowledge in order to build all these things, but he didn't even finish his degree. Yeah. He's self-educated. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because my life changed before and after SEER school, probably more than anything. Because it is this point where, yeah, no matter how bad things get, you're like, I made it through. So ours was in Spokane. That's where we did it, and it's cold out there. I did water survival at Pensacola. And man, once you get through that, you're just like, yeah, no matter what happens from this point forward, I'm just going to think about waking up with a little fire pit next to me, eating rabbits and ants in Washington State, and then nothing really seems that bad. But yeah, that's the thing. They don't have that now. This is what this current generation doesn't have.
It's like the intangible, like mental grit, though. Like, so even with the fund, with the veteran fund, we have a venture capital fund that invests in entrepreneurs that are military veterans or military spouses. And it's because that's the best type of entrepreneur to invest in.
Correct.
Because they've literally been battle tested, and they already have the mental wherewithal of the can't quit attitude that you cannot teach somebody else. They either have it in them or they don't. And it comes out in situations like that where your back's against the wall and you have to figure it out. That we do that in business every day, right? You have to be resourceful.
I was speaking to you, the toughest thing about business is people.
Yes.
And the thing that really happened for us in 3 days, we were animals.
Yeah.
You know, and so when things get tough in business, you find out who's turning on you. You know, I cut off the paychecks to my employees. Oh, gone. Do you know what I mean? But that's what they're trained to do. Whereas an entrepreneur cannot quit.
Yeah, I like what you said there. It's like a lot of this stuff is like it's based around human error. Like, for instance, like my wife's retired now, but she used to be a CT tech, right? X-ray CT tech. And I was always impressed. Like, I need to program the TV, but she can run a multi-million-dollar CT scanner, right? But so I'm having this conversation with her one day, and she's always, every single place she's ever worked, every hospital she's worked at, she's been very frustrated with, not because of the technology, but because of the human element that's going on and making things work. And so you've got, I thought this was very, very ironic, is that you've got this multi-million-dollar, it could be an MRI scanner, it could be like a CT scanner. It's like we have like this technology where we can actually take pictures of your guts, like inside of you, right? Miracle of technology, right? The one link, weakest link in the chain is the human element. It's like having the person staffed, getting them there on time, paying them enough for their skills, not pissing them off, giving them a 2 weeks vacation, whatever it is. The human element that goes along, it doesn't matter what the technology is. You can have this miracle technology right there, and it could be absolutely useless, or it will never be as effective as it could be if your mindset or if the organization isn't properly run.
Well, I think Mike hit it. If you come out right now with this kind of discipline and that kind of work ethic, you're gonna clean up in the next 10 to 20 years. You're gonna clean up, because that's the opposite side of what we're seeing right now. Like, with my kids, all I was trying to do is teach them those kinds of things. And I'm like, guys, you're gonna sail through because all your friends are pussies.
Your competition level is nothing now.
This level, we'll just remember from a normal distribution, that top, outside of one standard deviation, that top 16%. That top 16% has never been smaller, but it's also never been easier to get into. It's just like any effort whatsoever, you put yourself in the top 16%. When you ask women, it's like, what do you think the top 1% of wage earners are? They're like 20 million, 10 million. It's like, no, it's $400,000, $450,000. Top 10% of wage earners is $173,000. The average man in the United States makes $39,000 a year. Family household is like $67,000 a year, something like that. And they don't come to that realization. It's like how average has shifted so far to the left. And I think it's because we've gotten away from a survival scenario. We used to be an agrarian culture where literally being bigger and stronger and being able to hunt and to be able to manage a farm actually allowed you the ability to have more children. And now you need to be able to be a good programmer, and that allows you to have more children.
Matt, one more thing about entrepreneurship is the importance of friends.
Yes.
Like Kenny, Kenny and I have been for the 25 years. We're not partners, but we're nowhere. But we kick each other's butts. Kenny's always he's nudging me, prodding me, calling me names. I mean, George Gammon and Kenny called me a simp
Hey, let's not forget Jason Hartman is in there too.
I said, what are you guys talking about? So I had to look up the word.
Robert had to look it up. I'm sitting there. I go, dude, you're a simp. You got to change.
You know, I'll tell you something that's funny. When we talk about friends and stuff like that, like as soon as I've known you for almost a year now, right? And like the minute we started, we did an interview and we started hanging out. We were like, do you want to do a podcast? Hell yeah, I want to do a podcast. It was just a click like that. Yeah. In some ways, like you and I have the same dynamic that I had with Pat Campbell back in the day. When I met Robert for the first time, you guys are the ones that turned me on to Robert. I think it was Gam that turned me on to you. And then so we started talking. I've known you for almost 3 years, 3.5 years now. And then you were also instrumental in this as well. But there's that network, and one of the things that I think a lot of guys right now, especially of like say the latter half of the millennials and certainly the Generation Z right now, is they don't understand how men communicate. They don't understand how to have male friends. Correct. Whenever I have like a personal client or the people in my Patreon group, one of the questions I get quite a bit is like, how do I like interact with other guys? You know, how do I go to the gym and have like gym partners? How do I, because they can't tell the difference between being bullied or being hazed. If I'm like ribbing you and I'm fucking with this guy like that, like I can do that like the first time I meet him and I know like what his response is. When you met Justin Waller for the first time, you guys are like frat brothers. I know. I'm like, from the word go, you're like frat brothers, because there's that innate understanding of like how to interact as a man. He goes, this generation doesn't know how to do that.
He goes, you look great today, all homo. Shout out to Justin Waller. Yes. Shout out to Justin Waller.
So like we automatically just kind of like click, right? This generation, or just the Zoomer generation, and I would say the latter half of the millennials really don't have that. And for us, when we have to deal with those guys who are like the haters in the chat or something like that, I have to remember that they don't have that same frame of reference that we do.
Yes.
So I think it has something to do with social media as well, because I've noticed with guys,
definitely,
they're super comfortable, DMing me and carrying on a conversation on Instagram. But when you meet them in person, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so scared, I'm shy," and then it's not the same.
Social media is a buffer. It's a buffer against rejection.
No, it's because they're using ChatGPT. That's what you're
they're using.
Those are using ChatGPT to message you.
Yes.
And then when you meet them in person, they don't have ChatGPT anymore.
Exactly.
And they don't know what to say to you anymore.
Let me ask the question. So what attracts you to a man? Besides the Ferrari and the jet. No, I'm kidding. What qualities, what traits, and all this attract? Because I would say the four of you here, what men want, if you're straight. But anyway, but I'm saying, what is it today that you're looking for and all that? Tell the men out there.
I think we talked about this a little bit kind of on the last one that I was on. So like we were talking about ambition and, to act on it. And also I think it's important for, I feel like the four of us kind of feel the same way, when it comes to what we're looking for in a partner, because, we're sitting here with like a bunch of women that deal in business. But somebody who's also, masculine and could hold their own. I think everybody here is good with their femininity. I don't think anybody would have the "I don't need a man," attitude.
But I want a man.
In a mean way. Everybody here makes their own money and they are fantastic at it. But, not the hating of men kind of attitude.
I'm definitely trying to find the balance between, I don't need a man and I'm very independent, but I am very traditional. And I do like being married, and I do like being the one to cook and clean and take care of my man. I do both. So I run my business, but I do all the things that a traditional wife does, and I love that. That's my own personal preference. And there's a lot of things I look for in a man, but if we're just talking about that initial attraction, which a lot of guys want to know, forget later on, once we've had a couple dates, how are we going to initially connect? What's going to draw you in? For me, I can usually tell right away if a guy can handle my masculine energy and makes me feel more feminine. What I need in a partner, the things that traditionally women used to need from a partner, I don't really need. What I need is a man that is not insecure about my masculinity and knows how to make me feel more feminine. Or just naturally makes me feel more feminine. That's really important to me because it's been hard to find.
That's something that guys get so threatened by, because a lot of this generation isn't masculine like they used to be. So when they see somebody who's going for it, it's intimidating to them.
We've always said that if you're the right guy, you can draw that feminine out of that woman. Even if like, was it like resting bitch face? It's like if the girl seems like she's like really like, you know, standoffish, if you're the right guy, right times, you can draw that out of her.
It's a gift.
Hey, baby, if you're watching.
It's a gift to break through that effortlessly, because it also, when it's not ingenuine or they're trying to manipulate you or they're trying to figure out, you can feel that it's not natural. You can tell when it's natural that they're going to be a good compliment to you and they're not going to be insecure about you. And if you feel more, you know, giddy and feminine, being a masculine woman, you're onto something. So that's my initial attraction.
I think strong men, they come off so confident because they have a level of confidence within themselves. They have proof of what they've accomplished in their lives so far. They have ambitions of what they want to do and grow for themselves and for their future family. And so you can see that right away and it shines through. And so for me, I mean, I'm in a great relationship and you have to be with, or for me, as a woman who has big ambitions on the career side, I have to be with someone who's super confident and already has built up proof of the things that he has accomplished, because then we have an opportunity to build together. And so I think that's the key, is just like having that self-confidence.
But hold it down. Have you met men who want to shut you down or keep you down? Have you met men who are threatened by it and say, "Look, I don't like
yeah,
it"?
I personally haven't been around, like in a dating capacity, someone who would like talk down to me or put me down, but I have girlfriends who've been in relationships where they'll talk about, you know, some exciting business venture they want to try or something, they want to get their real estate license, whatever it is, and they'll be in a relationship with a guy who's like, "You won't last a year. Don't do that. That's not for you." That is like mind-blowing to me, because if you're going to be with somebody, you know, who could potentially end up being your husband, like for you guys to grow together and build this family together, you guys have to work together, right? You have to build together, which means you support each other, which means you support whatever those ambitions are and those dreams are, and figure out how you can help each other. And that comes from being in a self-confident place, I think, of having confidence of what you bring to the table, and then knowing that this is somebody that you see you could build something together with.
Thank you. Good. Well said.
I like a high effort man, so someone who follows through, because a lot of men talk and then they don't follow through with what they say. So that's a turn off to me.
That's like number one.
Yeah.
The guy I'm seeing now, when we start dating, I said, the first thing you need to know about me, mean what you say what you do. If you say, "Hey, this Friday I should take you to this," you better take me. Even if I don't really care what it was, there's nothing more unattractive to me than, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go get one of those. I need one of those. I'm gonna go get one of those, or I'm gonna go enroll in that, or I'm gonna go take a trip here next year," and you don't do it. It's probably one of the most unattractive things to me.
Demonstrate, do not explicate.
Yes, definitely. And also the little things of like opening doors. Like I think maybe just again growing up in a household where you see that, right? My dad opened all the doors. My dad made sure, and he had this saying of like all in. Like he would open the car door for my mom and I, close, and before he closed it, he would say all in, just to make sure we're in, right? And so like I grew up with that. So starting from high school onward, you know, from my high school boyfriend onward, that was one of my filters. Like
because your father set that model of masculinity.
Yes, if you are not opening the door for me, one, I notice, and two, I'm like, strike one. What the
exactly.
You know what I mean? Strike three, you're out. You know.
I often get into trouble for this because people think I would say something different, but I'm always for the idea of men paying for a date. If you're going to take a woman out, you're going to like. Because first of all, that establishes frame.
Amen.
You have a world into which that woman wants to enter. You always pay for it. And even guys, you want to say, guys, well, why do they hate you, Rolo? Because I say stuff like that. I mean, that sounds very old school, but it's also very pragmatic as well. There was a purpose to that. Like we will call it a tradition, but there's a conventional reason why you do that. Because you're establishing a frame into which a world into which that woman wants to enter, and that's part of that world. Well, it's not everybody confuses like chivalry with just like opening doors and stuff. Like chivalry, it's way more than that. It's a romantic ideal, and the reason why we have that romantic ideal is for very practical, pragmatic purposes.
Amen. Amen.
Anyways, we need to wrap up. We are at time right now. Is there anything, just before we quit, is there anything that the ladies would like? We always do this at the end of every show. Yeah. Is there anything that the ladies would like to ask anybody, any of the guys on the table right now? Is there a question you wanted to?
Well, on the spot, I can't think of anything. But I'm sure later tonight I'll think of a million things.
Okay. Or you can give us final thoughts.
I got a question.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you guys talk about the business ventures and stuff, is there an age where you think it's too late to start?
So I don't know. Gosh, no. I think, well.
Because you say, like, you teach your kids, you know, at a very young age, like, say, I'm 34. Like, is it too late to start?
Yeah, actually, I think that's the perfect time. I think, you know, if I was to look back on my life, I would say from, you know, in my 20s, and it was mostly learning, failing fast and trying different things and working lots of different kinds of jobs. And I didn't actually become an entrepreneur until my early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, now, you know, what's 20 years later, I was like, geez, that was awesome, right? And I think it's just a series of businesses and a series of things that I tried over a long period of time, many of which I didn't succeed at. Right. And then you just got to reflect and go, okay, that
What were you
work.
doing before that? And you said you started in your early 30s. What were you doing before that?
So I started in property management, actually, right out of school.
Makes
and I was
sense.
managing properties for a company. And that actually gave me, I was like, one day, literally, this is a true story. I was sitting there managing this property for this really wealthy guy in Seattle. And he's like, dude, thanks for, you know, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm on the wrong side of the desk. That was it for me. That was it. And I was probably in my late 20s. I started buying, and then I never looked back.
Mine isn't as lucrative of a business, but that's how mine started as well. As I was on the other side, and I was like, I need to be on this side, and that's when I discovered it, found it.
The best time to start is right now. You know how you said you're 34?
It's a good question.
When I put this book out, I was 45 years old. So that my first, and I'd never set out to be an author. I just did it, and now I'm the author of 5 different books.
Nice.
I started at 45 years old to do this. I was just talking to Sandra, your assistant here, because we were talking about her son and him being 18, and like most kids today, kind of rudderless in life, really. And I've always said this is like, always say yes. Always say yes to opportunities. Always say, you know what? Do you want to be in a commercial? Yes. Do you want to model? Yes. Do you want to be in the Swimsuit USA? Yes. Do you want to be in whatever? Just say yes, yes, yes. Until you might completely flop, but you are learning something along the way as a result of having done that. And maybe in some cases you say, man, I really have a talent for that. I never would have figured that out had I not done that. I didn't set out to be an author. I never went to school to become an author. I don't have a degree in English. My degrees are a Bachelor of Fine Arts and behavioral psychology, right? So when I started working in advertising and marketing and branding, I worked for casino marketing. I worked for wine and spirits for quite some time. And then from that, I take those skills and I use them in what I'm doing right now, whether it's like public speaking, whether it's being sort of a personality. I used to do improvisational acting. So I take all those talents and I put them into something else. There's no school for what I do. There's no school for what really anybody at this table has done. It's a result of this sort of aggregate of all of our experiences throughout our lives. So at 34, when's the best time to start? Well, right now.
Right now.
And so when, like, for instance, like I'm going to probably put out another book by probably the beginning of next year at this rate. But now I'm an author, and I'm confident that I can repeat this success. I'm confident that like people want to hear what I have to say. I had to really kind of get over myself to do this in the first place. But I think that if you're going to do things and you're going to end up becoming a Robert Kiyosaki, a Ken McElroy, a Michael Sartain, it's not, you don't go to Michael Sartain school. You don't go to Robert Kiyosaki school. You're the aggregate of your experiences by saying yes to all these opportunities. And as you said, sometimes you go bankrupt. Sometimes you flop, but you get back up and you get back at it again.
Best experience.
The definition of a guy is how he bounces back from being zeroed out.
Yep. I was never bankrupt, but I've been broke. And the best thing was I had to go work it out, talk to my bankers. Like I said, they don't ask for your grade point average. They want to see this. So I had to sit down with them. The game has a financial statement in it, and I had to show them my plan, how I was going to come out of it. It was the best education possible. It was humbling.
Especially when you have to convince somebody of it.
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
Just related to proximity. I mean, proximity is key. And I mean, that's how Ken and I met, was through YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. And what would your guys' advice be to someone who wants to expand their sphere of influence?
Well, I think for me, Jim Rohn said it best, right? You are the 5 people you hang out with. And I think you don't have to get rid of people, but I've always paid attention to that. There are people that are, sucking from you, and there are people that you're learning from. And I'm always taking a look at that. That's why I went from EO to YPO, because when I went into YPO, I felt a little uncomfortable because those businesses were so much bigger. And then the bar just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger for me personally. And I think that's a big deal.
I already said it's who you hang out with. You know, my friends are like Kenny and like Gammon and all this. We are tough on each other.
Yeah.
In a nice way.
Tough love.
Yeah.
Very important.
Really tough.
And I learned that the hard way. They held me accountable now too, because apparently I'm a part of all this.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So
it's for your friends if your friends are going to pussy cake, patty cake with you, not your friend.
Yeah.
They won't tell you the truth. They'll just everything's fine and all this. So I prod them. I said, what do you really think?
Yeah.
And to find somebody who's going to blast you, hard to find.
Yep.
Love that.
I think that's it for us. We got to wrap up.
Hey, listen, the jet's not leaving without Robert.
That's right. That is
stay
true.
as long as he wants. We can go all night.
Thank you guys.
That is
That was
true.
really
Why don't you
fun.
talk
Thank you,
about where
guys.
people can get this?
Yeah. Where can they?
Online at Rich Dad, but I'll get me your names and I'll ship you a game free.
Excellent.
We already have it. We did the
lovely.
cash flow game night at our brokerage.
I'll take
remember?
hers.
And we'll put
Over and play.
we'll put a link in the description
Sure.
for this.
Perfect.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely we'll do
That's a
this.
great way for Robert to get numbers, isn't it?
Right? There you go.
I've
I
seen
know.
that trick.
Oh.
When-
Thanks, guys. This has been
But
awesome.
anyway, just teach. You find when you teach, you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the most
Absolutely.
powerful thing you can do. So somebody says, "Oh, I played it once," I'm going, "You didn't learn anything." It's like saying, "I putt the ball once." I'm a professional golfer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the way we write the course is we do. We learn by doing, and so if when people want to say like, well, how do I live a better life? What's the takeaway from this? Show me how to live kind of thing. It's really, we can only give you the tools. You have to be the one to actually take those tools and use something and paint the
Right.
picture of your life or build the whatever it is that's going to be your next life. But it comes down to the individual. I can't make somebody go use the tools that you or I or anybody else gives them. But it comes down to sort of your own personal motivation and incentivizing yourself to go and become better than you are right now. What does it take to go from being ordinary to being extraordinary? The answer to that is your own motivation and getting off your
Ambition
ass and
and
doing
doing.
it.
Yeah.
Stop
And
sedating yourself.
implementation.
Get out there and
Yep,
do it.
You got
And
it.
if I could add one more thing, choose your teachers wisely.
Right.
Because somebody puts something in your head, it's there for a while.
Yes.
We were talking about action, so I think that's another issue with the decline in gentlemen and just society these days. All these podcasts are out. Everybody's getting all this great information, so they're getting their stuff done, working. They're playing these podcasts from brilliant guys like you in the background, and they think I'm learning, I'm improving my life, and they listen and they listen and they listen. But then 2 years later, they're still
They
listening.
take no
Yes.
action.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened, and I think that's
Apply it.
a big issue that's been going on. And
Implementation.
I do want to throw this in real quick. If there are any women, we got off subject with talking about women in business and masculine and feminine energy. If there's any women with high masculine energy business owners watching this, check out Rory Ray, RORIRAYE. She is an expert in this, and she teaches women how to separate the masculine and the feminine and when and why. And she's brilliant. It's really good stuff. It helped me a lot. You guys should even have her on the show
Okay.
sometime.
We'll look into that. Rory Ray.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks, guys. This has
Great.
been awesome.
Thank you guys
so
very much.
much.
Thank you guys.
And-
All right, listen, we're going to see all of you really soon. You guys can check out everyone's link. We're going to put it down here in the bottom. Hopefully we have not sufficiently offended you. Or hopefully we have, so that this thing goes really well on YouTube, guys. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much, Robert, for coming out
Thanks,
here.
Robert.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys here really soon.
Thank you guys.
It was so nice.